Chapter 89. Marty Westman's bank account was getting bigger every 5 days. Granted, it wasn't as enormous as the checks he was designing, each one more unique than the previous one. He had enough money, though, to start thinking about his future with Anna. Normally things don't work out this smoothly, but back when he was single, he'd entertained the notion of approaching those women who always sat in that one booth at the inn place. One of them brought along a jewelry rack a few times, and he thought his own in would be to ask her about rings and things. He could never quite muster up the gumption to do so, but now that he was in a relationship, things were different. He made sure to wait until Anna was downstairs restocking, refilling, or redoing whatever barkeeps redo. Sliding quickly over to the booth that now had 2 guys and 2 women, Marty interrupted them with a sheepish smile and his finger pressed to his lips. "Shh! Anyone know anything about engagement rings?" Chapter 90. The Boston Edison mansion that the Fidriches called home since the 1960s had a private security car parked in the front. Rolling up to it, L. Rick started to introduce himself to the bored guard sitting in the Crown Vic. "I know you, Mr. Rick," said the retired Detroit cop. "The Fidriches are waiting for you." The mansion wasn't ostentatious, as mansions go. Built during the height of Prohibition, it had a formal front entryway, but around back was an even grander entrance, designed to usher guests into a lavish basement parlor with no windows, but lots of booze. Very secret, very hush-hush. These days, it housed a pool table, ping-pong table, and an impressive model train layout built by a guy from Baltimore whose sole job it was to travel around the country, the world even, building these things for older, richer men. The train on the setup wound its way around a mini Rosa Park, a few pizza places, the Red Wheels home ice, and back again. Mike Fidrich was sitting at the controls with an engineer's cap on when L. Rick walked in. "Ah, there's a 12:15, right on schedule," said Fidrich as he stood up and shook L. Rick's hand. "Hello, Mr. Fidrich. Excuse me for saying this, but you look different somehow." "I think you know why, Lyle," said Mrs. Fidrich as she entered the room from a hidden stairwell, another holdover from Prohibition. Normally, L. Rick hated it when people found out his real first name. Not in this case. Mrs. Fidrich was sweet, pleasant, kind, and every other soft adjective he could come up with. "That's why I'm here, right." "Michael is in serious breach of his contract," said Mrs. Fidrich. "Honey, not in front of the help," laughed Mike Fidrich. "Hey," said Bald Mikey, who had also appeared as if out of nowhere from behind a secret panel. "Sorry," Mike said to Mike. "Lunch ready?" "Hoppa," said Bald Mikey, lighting his plate of sizzling Saganaki cheese on fire. Everyone in the basement watched, with just a tiny bit of dread, as the flaming cheese fireball, a traditional dish served in Detroit's Greektown, jumped up to just inches below the ceiling. Chapter 91. "So, Mr. Fidrich sold you and your partner the GAR building on Cass and Grand River, then?" L. Rick asked Bald Mikey over his insanely good tero-patakia that the celebrity chef had whipped up for lunch. Yeah, but we had to promise we'd rehab it, not knock it down," Mikey responded, holding a grape leaf-wrapped dolmades. "That thing's been around since the 1890s, said Mike Fidrich. "I wouldn't let just anyone take it," he continued, while reaching for a piece of pistachio baklava. His hand was gently, lovingly, firmly swatted away by his wife. "That reminds me," said Elric. "Let's talk about this contract." Chapter 92. He was happy for the first time, and he didn't remember how long. The story the Fidriches told was a positive, enlightening one, and he wasn't used to that. L. Rick drove through the sunny, late summer afternoon with a sense of peace. That wasn't entirely the case throughout his whole body, though. 2 hydrogen bonds simultaneously released one angry, lone thymine and cast it adrift. At a stoplight, Elric fumbled through his glove box and pulled out his doggy-style CD by a famous LA rap star. Cranking his car stereo, his body began to shake in time with the beats. That's not good if you're a thymine trying to hold on for dear life. Cruising up Woodward, Elric started rapping along with "What's my name?" adding a beatbox guttural sound from deep inside his chest. Thymine von Richthofen was in a death spiral. Passing Crispelli's, Elric noticed a rather large loogie in the back of his throat. At the 12-mile stoplight, he expectorated out the window. There on Woodward Avenue, in the shadow of the famous Shrine of the Little Flower Church, with its enormous limestone Art Deco crucifixion, lay the Baron's final genetic legacy, before being quickly run over by a Prius. No one on Earth noticed the passing. But higher intelligences across the universe, across dimensions, chuckled for the next 10 minutes about how Snoop Dogg had finally got the better of the Red Baron. The bloody Beige Baron, hawked up and shot down once and for all. Chapter 93. It was impossible to get tickets to watch the Bengals at Rosa Park in September. Even more impossible were tickets when Hope pitched. And yet, at each game, dozens of prime seats behind the backstop screen and out along the wall overlooking the gorgeous green right field were taken up by youngsters from any one of the several new daycare centers in Detroit. No matter whether he was pitching, and by rights should have been out warming up in the bullpen, or if he was just DHing, Hope could be found before each game laughing and joking around with the young girls and boys. It was easy to spot them all. They and their colorful matching T-shirts were dwarfed by him, the big Bengal dressed in his home team white uniform. The kids loved Hope. It was obvious to see the feeling was mutual. Fans in nearby seats often reported hearing giggling, high fives, and shrieks of laughter, and that was just coming from Hope. The kids were even more enthusiastic. Season ticket holders in the seats directly behind them also told of a few odd stories. They couldn't quite hear or remember them, something to do with Albert Einstein, Carl Sagan, and a Ferndale High School teacher who was both a baseball coach and a quantum physicist. One thing that stood out to those seated near the kids was the chant they always heard. "What are we made of?" shouted Hope. "Star stuff," shouted the kids. "What are we all?" he asked. "All stars," they yelled, and finished with an enormous cheer of solidarity. Chapter 94. The Bengals were in first place with 2 weeks to go in the season. Their magic number to clinch a spot in the playoffs had long since been eclipsed. It was on everyone's lips and minds that these Bengals had gone from worst to first. When Dean and Scott, cousins to Wolf Sports announcers Chris and Keith, walked up to Rosa Park with their prime tickets in hand, Dean noticed something different about the light stanchions, holding the massive floodlights illuminating the field of play. "Huh," he said. "What now?" asked his brother. "Didn't you used to be an usher here?" Dean asked. "Yeah, back in the Stone Ages," answered Scott with a reference to when the second most famous British band played several concerts at the stadium. "When did they install these solar panels everywhere?" Dean asked. Neither one of them had read the article in the paper or seen the report on television, probably because there was no article or report. A skeleton stealth crew had worked from sundown till sunup installing the panels during the Bengals' final road tour. "That's awesome," said Dean. And then for the millionth time he said, "Did you know that if just 1/4 of all the structures on Earth had solar generators, they could power the other 3/4 of the planet?" Scott had already tuned him out.